I'm not a complicated man. My life's been built on hard work, early mornings, honest paychecks, and the belief that family comes first. That's how my old man raised me, and that's how I plan to raise my kids. I married young, started working even younger, and never once thought I'd wind up where I am now, sitting alone in my truck, staring at the back of my old man's house, wondering how the hell I didn't see it coming. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It started simple. Like most things that ruin your life do. My wife, Jenny, had never left our state in her life. Born and raised here in Indiana, just like me. We met in high school, fell in love before graduation, and were married by the time she turned 20. She wasn't the adventurous type. Didn't care for planes. Didn't trust hotel beds. But something changed after she had the kids. Maybe she started feeling trapped. Maybe the walls of our modest home closed in on her a little tighter each day. I don't know. All I knew was one night she looked at me across the dinner table, our two boys throwing mashed potatoes at each other, and said, "You know what I've never done?" "What's that?" I asked, distracted by work emails on my phone. "Left the state." I looked up. "You've been to Kentucky. Remember that truck show?" She laughed. "That doesn't count. That was across the border and back in 4 hours." I nodded. "All right, fair. So what would count?" She leaned back, arms crossed. "I don't know. Something different. Something nice. Just to say I did it." And like a damn fool, I saw that as an opportunity to give something special. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. She deserved a break, I told myself. Hell, we all did. So I started planning. A cabin in Tennessee. Nothing fancy, just a quiet rental by the Smokies, some fresh air, hiking trails, and a pool for the kids. I booked it for 4 nights. Packed their bags. Even loaded up snacks and drew out the route on paper in case her phone got no service. The only problem? I got hit with a rush job at work. Commercial roofing isn't a business that waits for your vacation plans. Storm season was heavy, and when the call came in for a contract that could pay off half my mortgage, I knew I couldn't walk away from it. I told Jenny. "I want you to go without me," I said. "Take the boys. Have fun. Make memories." She hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Of course," I said, smiling like it didn't tear me up inside. "It's a gift. For all of you. But I don't like driving that far with the kids." That's when the second mistake came. "I'll ask my dad." She blinked. "Your dad? You think he'll want to drive us down there?" "Why not? He's retired. He gets bored sitting around. He loves the boys. It's perfect." She didn't look convinced. And maybe that should have been my first clue. But I called him that night, and the old man said yes without hesitation. "You trust me to haul your family across 3 states, huh?" he said with a chuckle. "Yeah," I said. Who else would I trust more than my own father? The trip went off without a hitch. Jenny texted me the first night, photos of the boys in the pool, of the view from the back porch, even one of her with a glass of wine by the fire pit. I smiled like an idiot. I missed them, sure, but I was proud I gave them that moment. She didn't text the second night. Or the third. I figured maybe she was enjoying herself too much to bother with her phone. Maybe the boys were wearing her out. I let it slide. They got back Sunday afternoon. The truck pulled into the driveway, and my stomach did a little flip when I saw them step out, sunburned and smiling. But not her. Jenny didn't smile. She looked changed. Not in the way she walked or talked. Just the air around her. She didn't meet my eyes when she came inside. Didn't kiss me. Just dropped her bag and went straight to the bedroom. I followed her in. How was it? I asked. She sat down on the bed, pulled off her sandals slowly, then said, "I want a divorce." The words hit like a wrench to the gut. I blinked. What? She looked up at me, calm, distant, tired. I said I want a divorce. I laughed without humor. That's a hell of a welcome home joke, Jen. I'm not joking. There was no fight in her voice. No anger. Just finality. I tried to process it. Is this about me missing the trip? No, she said flatly. Then what is it? Where's this coming from? She stood up, walked past me, and said over her shoulder, "I'll stay in the guest room tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." She left me standing in the doorway, frozen, my heartbeat in my ears. That night I couldn't sleep. I paced the house. Checked on the boys. Went through our texts. Looked at the photos from the trip like they held clues. And that's when I noticed it. A small thing. A reflection in the cabin's sliding glass door in one of her photos. My father. Shirtless. Standing way too close behind her. I stared at it for a long time. Convinced myself it was nothing. But it wasn't. That was just the start. And the revenge I'd take for what they did? That would be the ending they never saw coming. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything. About how I spent weeks planning that trip. About how I trusted the two people in my life I should have been able to trust the most. About that damn reflection. I must have looked at that photo 24 times, zooming in until the pixels broke apart like dust. But it was him. My father. I knew the outline of his bald head, the tan of his shoulders, the way his gut sagged under his ribs. And I knew Jenny. I knew how she smiled. And in that photo, she looked happy. Too happy. I got up early and made pancakes for the boys. They didn't notice anything different. They were just glad to be home, back to their toys and cereal and cartoons. I was glad for that, at least they didn't have to carry what I was feeling. Around 10, Jenny came into the kitchen. She didn't say good morning. Didn't touch her coffee. Just sat at the far end of the table like she was a guest in her own house. I waited until the boys ran off to their room before I asked, "Are you gonna explain what the hell's going on?" She didn't flinch. Just stared into her empty mug. "I told you. I want a divorce." That's not an explanation. That's a grenade you tossed in my lap. Her jaw tightened. I've felt this way for a while. Really? Because 2 weeks ago you said you loved me. The night before you left, you kissed me and told me I was a good husband. I was lying. I stepped back like she'd slapped me. "You know what?" I said, gripping the table. "Just tell me what happened down there. Because something changed. You came back different. I can feel it." Silence. I waited. Then her eyes met mine, cold, detached, dead in the middle. We were happy. The kids had fun. It was peaceful. And my dad? He was helpful. I felt the heat rush to my face. "You slept with him, didn't you?" Her lip twitched. Just slightly. She didn't say yes. But she didn't say no. That silence said more than anything. "I want you out of my house," I said, my voice low, even. "Today." She didn't argue. She just stood up and walked to the bedroom. 10 minutes later, she was packing. Quietly. Methodically. Like she'd rehearsed this. I sat on the porch, gripping my coffee so hard the mug nearly cracked. Watching the driveway. Wondering if he'd show up. He did. Pulled in an hour later in that rust-red Silverado I helped him fix last winter. He didn't even get out of the truck. Jenny carried her duffel out, didn't look at me once. Tossed it in the back, climbed in, and they drove away. Just like that. My wife and my father, leaving together. Like they hadn't just wrecked the entire foundation of my life. The next few days were quiet. Numb. I went through the motions. Fed the boys. Worked my shift. Stared at the ceiling at night until sunrise bled through the blinds. I didn't tell anyone. Not my coworkers. Not the neighbors. Not my brother. Because how the hell do you even start that conversation? Hey, did you hear? My dad banged my wife in a log cabin I paid for. I did a lot of thinking. About what it meant to be betrayed. About the kind of man I thought my dad was. About what Jenny must have told herself to make it okay. And eventually, all that thinking turned to something darker. Not rage. Not violence. Just clarity. There's more than one way to destroy a person. Sometimes, you don't need fists or fire. Just patience. And knowledge. Because people like them? They never see it coming when the quiet one starts planning. The night after Jenny left with my father, I couldn't sleep again. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I just sat in the recliner with a beer that had gone warm hours ago, staring at the baby monitor even though both boys were fast asleep. That monitor used to give me peace, knowing I could protect them from anything. But now? Now I realized the real danger didn't come from outside. It came from inside the house. From the people you shared your bed with. The people whose voices you trusted. And that realization cracked something in me. I needed answers. Not just assumptions, not that gut feeling. I needed the full, ugly truth. I needed to know how long it had been going on. Who initiated it? If it happened in my bed. And most of all, why? Not because I thought it would make me feel better. But because knowing gives power. And I planned to use it. The first place I started was with my dad's truck. I still had the spare keys from when I fixed it last fall. He'd forgotten, or maybe just assumed I'd never use them. Either way, he didn't lock the glove box. The second night after she left, once the boys were asleep and the street was quiet, I drove over to his place. Parked a block away. Walked through the dark like I used to sneak around as a teenager. I found the Silverado in the driveway, just as expected. I unlocked it silently, slipped into the passenger seat, and started going through everything: old receipts, snack wrappers, maps, a folded-up brochure from the Tennessee rental with a heart drawn on it in pink pen. Jenny's handwriting. On the back, she'd written, "We deserve this. You make me feel alive." That was the first time I felt it, not just the hurt or betrayal, but the raw, burning urge to do something. Something bigger than anger. Something smarter than punching walls or screaming in the dark. I folded the paper, stuck it in my back pocket, and kept digging. What I found next shifted the whole game. A burner phone. Tucked inside the compartment under the passenger seat. Still charged. I powered it on, heart pounding in my throat. There were only 2 contacts in it, Jay and me. And the messages? I read every single one. Some were harmless enough. Just logistics and grocery lists. Jay, he's too busy to notice anything anyway. Me, you were right. He trusts me too much. Jay, I want you again tonight. The kids are asleep. Come to the cabin. Me, best damn trip of my life. That last one was sent 3 days before they came home. While I was working on a scorching rooftop, killing myself to make a living, they were in bed together. I snapped photos of the messages with my own phone. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof. And still. I didn't go to the cops. Didn't call a lawyer. Didn't tell a soul. Because if I blew it all up too fast, I'd only get the satisfaction of watching it burn. But if I waited, if I was patient, I could take everything from them. Piece by piece. I started slow. Real slow. The first step was putting on a mask. Jenny came by once to pick up some clothes. She barely spoke to me. She didn't look like a woman who was sorry. She looked like a woman who'd already replaced me in her mind. I handed her a trash bag full of her stuff and said nothing but, "Take care." She didn't even blink. Later that night, I looked up her social media. Already changed her profile picture, just her, smiling, no wedding ring. Location marked as, feeling free dizzy. The kids? Not even mentioned. My dad didn't have a Facebook. Never cared for that crap. But I knew he had a bank account. A truck. A retirement plan. Things he relied on. And now, I had something he didn't. Control. Because he never expected his son, the one who always forgave, who stayed silent at family dinners, who fixed his roof and mowed his lawn, to be calculating his downfall in the quiet hours of the night. But I was. I had time. I had motive. And most of all, I had nothing left to lose. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but no one ever talks about the part where you have to sit with the heat of it, let it simmer in your gut day and night until you can breathe without choking on it. I smiled at my boys every morning, poured their cereal, made their lunches. I helped them with their schoolwork and walked them to the bus stop. I made sure they felt safe, loved, whole, because they didn't deserve to carry what she and my father had done. That was my weight to bear. But every evening, after they fell asleep, I went to work. I started small. I knew my father's bank. Knew his passwords too. He never changed them, not even once since I helped him set up his online account in 2014. Same username. Same password. I could have emptied his account, sure, but that was too loud. Too easy to trace. So I played it subtle. I made a few changes. Signed him up for a few recurring donations. Nothing too obvious, a veterans group, a political campaign he'd hate, a few oddball charities. A few hundred here, a few hundred there. He wouldn't notice it at first. But over time, that money would bleed out like a slow leak in a tire. And when he did notice, he'd be too proud to tell anyone it was happening, especially not me. I made a few calls, too. Pretended to be him. Claimed he wanted to refinance the truck, switch his insurance policy, ask about early withdrawal from his retirement fund. Just enough to raise a few flags. Stir some confusion. Create a little chaos. All while I kept my hands clean. Jenny, on the other hand, was easier to track. She didn't know how to cover her tracks. She thought deleting texts and changing profile pictures would make her invisible. She forgot I was the one who paid our phone bill for the last 10 years. I still had access to her GPS history. Still saw where she went. And that's how I found out they weren't just sleeping together. They were living together. She moved in with him. My father and my wife, under the same roof. Sleeping in the bed I helped him build after Mom died. Raising my boy's mother under the same ceiling where I grew up. That hit different. But it also gave me a gift. I knew where they were. And now, I could watch. I drove by the house 3 times that week. Never got out of the truck. Just watched from a distance. Saw the curtains drawn, the porch light flicker on at night. Saw her car in the driveway, parked right behind his. On the 3rd night, I watched the kitchen window. And there she was. Jenny. Washing dishes. Wearing one of my dad's flannel shirts. Like nothing happened. Like she hadn't burned the life we built to the ground and walked into another one without flinching. I gripped the steering wheel so tight I thought it might snap. But I didn't go in. No. That's not how this plays out. You don't storm the castle in broad daylight. You sneak in at night. You study the walls. You learn the schedules. And then? You break them from the inside. Back home, I started planting seeds. I left my old wedding ring on the nightstand the next time Jenny came to pick up some of the kids' clothes. Let her see it. Let her wonder if I was still broken, or worse, if I wasn't. I started posting photos on social media. Me with the boys. Me fixing things. Me smiling at the park. I made sure mutual friends saw them. And then, the final touch, I started dating. Or, at least, made it look like I was. A few fake flirty comments from a coworker. One staged photo with a girl I knew from high school. Nothing over the top. Just enough to reach Jenny's radar. Because if I knew her, and I did, jealousy wasn't just an emotion for her. It was a switch. And I wanted it flipped. Meanwhile, I kept digging. I learned my father had been planning to sell his house. Something they probably hadn't told me because they knew it would light me up. So I made a phone call. To the realtor. And pretended to be interested in buying. Scheduled a tour. Showed up in a nice shirt. Took photos of every room. Smiled politely. And when the realtor asked why I looked familiar, I said, I used to live here. My mom died in that room. She blinked. You're Wayne's son. I nodded. He didn't mention that. She didn't say anything, just looked uncomfortable. Good. Let the discomfort spread. Let it root itself in every corner of the house they now shared. Because this was just the beginning. I wasn't going to ruin them in one blow. No, I was going to dismantle everything. Piece by damn piece. I knew it wouldn't take long for things to shift between them. Jenny and my father, they were too different. That kind of thrill doesn't last. Lust, betrayal, adrenaline, it fades. And what's left when it does? Two people who only feel close because they burned someone else down together. But there's no real future in shared guilt. Especially when one of them starts to wonder if they were just a stepping stone. I didn't have to wait long. 3 weeks after she left, Jenny texted me. Jenny, can we talk? That was it. No punctuation, no heart emoji, no attitude. Just, can we talk? I stared at the message for 10 minutes. Didn't reply. Let it sit. Then finally, I typed. Me, about the kids? Jenny, no. About everything. That told me all I needed to know. The high was wearing off. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to feel the weight of what she'd done. So I set the trap. I agreed to meet her in public. A diner on the edge of town. Quiet, familiar, safe. I arrived 5 minutes late on purpose, just enough to make her feel like she was the one waiting. When I walked in, she looked up and I saw it, uncertainty. That thing that creeps into someone's eyes when they start to realize they might have made the wrong choice. She was wearing makeup like she used to. Not too much. Just enough to make it clear she cared how I saw her. I sat down across from her and ordered a coffee. She stared at the table for a moment, then finally said, I made a mistake. I didn't say a word. Let her talk. I thought maybe we'd grown apart. That you were too busy, too tired, too closed off. And your dad, he was there. He listened. He said all the things I wanted to hear. Still, I said nothing. I'm not saying I didn't choose it. I did. But I didn't think it would feel like this afterward. Feel like what? She blinked. Her voice cracked a little. Lonely. I gave her a soft, understanding look. You live with someone and feel lonely. That's something. She looked like she might cry, but I wasn't falling for it. She wasn't here to apologize. She was here to test the waters. See if I'd still take her back. See if the safety net was still hanging there, waiting for her to fall into it. And I let her think I was catching her. I forgive you, I said, voice quiet. She exhaled hard, eyes wet. You, really? Of course. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life angry. We have kids. She reached across the table like she wanted to touch my hand, but I gently pulled away to grab my coffee. Let the gesture hang in the air, unanswered. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Have you been seeing anyone? There it was. The jealousy. The crack. I smiled, just a little. A few dates. Nothing serious. Her jaw tightened. Just a flicker of tension. Perfect. Later that night, I made sure word got to my father. He hated social media. But his brother didn't. And his brother followed me online. I posted a picture from a fake date. Just me and a friend from work, laughing over a drink. I tagged it, good company is hard to find these days. I knew my uncle would show my dad within the hour. And I knew Jenny would get hell for it. The next day, I got a message from a private number. Unknown, you think you're clever? No name. No greeting. Just bitterness. I replied. Me, I learned from the best. Right, Dad? He didn't respond. But I knew he saw it. A week passed. Then another. I went quiet. Focused on the boys. Focused on work. Waited. That's when I got the break I'd been preparing for. A call from Jenny. This time, her voice was different. Desperate. He's drinking again, she said. A lot. And he's been saying things, mean things. I think maybe I made a mistake. I almost laughed. You think? I'm sorry to hear that, I said coolly. What do you want me to do about it? I don't know. I just wanted you to know. I could have ripped into her. Could have said what I really felt. But I didn't. Because the more she unraveled, the more careless she'd get. The more isolated he felt, the more paranoid he'd become. And between the two of them, they'd destroy each other. All I had to do was keep watching. And wait for the right time to strike next. Things were going according to plan. Jenny was unraveling. My father was growing paranoid. I had them walking on eggshells, and I hadn't even raised my voice. Every little move I made was designed to twist the knife without them realizing who held the handle. But then something changed. It started with a knock at my door. Not Jenny. Not my father. Not even someone I knew well. It was my mother's sister, Aunt Dana. I hadn't seen her in over 5 years. Not since my mother's funeral. She lived 2 states over and only called once a year to check in. But now she was standing on my front porch, clutching her purse, looking like she'd aged 10 years since I last saw her. Can I come in? She asked, eyes darting like someone had followed her. Yeah. Sure. I stepped aside, still wiping my hands on a dish towel. She walked in like she wasn't sure the floor was real. What's going on? I asked, closing the door behind her. I didn't know if I should come, she said, breath shallow. But I had to. You need to know the truth. That phrase, the truth, it always meant one thing, more lies. About what? She sat at the kitchen table, hands trembling as she pulled out a folded letter. Yellowed. Old. Too old. About your mom. About your father. About the kind of man he really is. I sat across from her and unfolded the letter. It was from my mother. Addressed to me. But it had never been given to me. My aunt nodded, eyes brimming with tears. She gave it to me the year before she died. Told me to give it to you someday, when you were old enough to understand. But I didn't think the time would ever come. I read the first line and my hands went cold. If you're reading this, it means I didn't have the strength to say it out loud. It went on. Line by line. Revealing things I'd never imagined. My father had cheated on her. More than once. With a neighbor. With a coworker. With her own cousin. But worse than that, when she found out and tried to leave, he'd convinced everyone she was unstable. Said she was paranoid. Got her put on meds. Made her feel like she was losing her mind. Your father was charming, my aunt whispered. Everyone loved him. But she knew the truth. And it ate her alive. I just sat there, numb. All this time, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. Jenny's affair was brutal. My father's part in it? Worse. But this? This was a legacy of deception. It ran deeper than I ever imagined. And then Aunt Dana dropped the real bomb. He didn't just steal your wife, she said. He wanted to control her the same way he controlled your mom. My head jerked up. What do you mean? She hesitated, then slid her phone across the table. A photo was open. Blurry. Taken from a distance. But I recognized the people instantly. My father. Jenny. And a woman I didn't recognize. They were standing outside some building, looked like a clinic. Not medical. Counseling. Jenny's not just living with him, Aunt Dana said. He's trying to get her into his little world. Therapy. Isolation. Making her dependent. I stared at the screen. Suddenly, Jenny's unraveling didn't feel like guilt anymore. It felt like déjà vu. She wasn't just coming undone. She was being pulled apart, by the same man who did it to my mother. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't even realize it. I sat in the dark after Aunt Dana left. Heart pounding. Thoughts spinning. What I thought was revenge, was only scratching the surface. I'd been so focused on hurting them, I hadn't realized that Jenny might be more than just a betrayer. She might be a pawn. And worse? So had my mother been. I had a decision to make. Stick to the plan and finish destroying them both? Or shift my aim? And go after the real enemy? My father wasn't just a cheater. He was a manipulator. A predator. And suddenly, all my anger took new shape. Sharper. Colder. This wasn't just about Jenny anymore. This was about breaking the man who had been playing God for decades. And I would. No matter what it took. Something changed inside me after reading my mother's letter. Up until then, I thought I was in control of the storm. I thought I was orchestrating payback like some quiet mastermind, playing with their emotions, leaking poison into the cracks. But the letter made one thing clear. I was never the first victim. And maybe Jenny wasn't the villain I thought she was. Don't get me wrong, I hadn't forgiven her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I saw it differently now. The pattern. My father's charm. The way he swooped in at people's weakest points. How he made you feel safe just long enough to trap you. He didn't just sleep with my wife. He groomed her. And I was going to destroy him for it. I started with the phone. While the boys were with Jenny, I drove out to the parking lot of the counseling center I'd seen in the photo from Aunt Dana. I waited. Watched. And there he was, my father, wearing a smile like a mask, holding Jenny's hand as they walked out together. She looked quieter. Not in love. Not happy. Just quiet. Then he said something, and she nodded, small, obedient. I knew that look. I'd seen it in photos of my mom when I was a boy. The kind of nod that didn't come from agreement, it came from survival. That's when I knew for sure, she wasn't just there because she wanted to be. She was stuck. And I was going to pry her loose. That night, I used an old contact from high school, Nate. We used to fix phones together at a strip mall kiosk. Now he ran a quiet side hustle, phone cloning and data recovery. I gave him my dad's number. Think you can clone it? He smirked. In my sleep. Don't need the calls. Just texts. GPS. Maybe voice memos if he's dumb enough. Oh, your dad's dumb enough, he said. Give me 48 hours. When the results came in, I almost threw up. Hundreds of texts. Controlling messages. I saw what you wore to the store. You said you'd dress modestly. Don't call him. You know he's not healthy for you. I love you more than anyone ever could. But I can't keep loving someone who talks back. Some were worse. Threats masked as guilt. Guilt masked as praise. And voice memos. Jesus. In one of them, he was coaching her through what to say at a custody hearing. Tell the court he was emotionally absent. Say he made you feel alone. They won't check. You're the mother, Jenny. Judges always believe the mother. He was grooming her to take my kids. Not just emotionally, but legally. He wasn't done with me. He was still playing the long game. So I played mine harder. I printed every message. Labeled every recording. Made digital backups. Sent one to a lawyer friend in St. Louis, just in case something happened to me. Then, I paid Jenny another visit. She opened the door looking worn out, sweatpants, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes. She wasn't the same woman who strutted out of my life weeks ago. Can we talk? I asked. She hesitated, but stepped aside. I walked in and handed her the manila folder. What's this? Proof. She opened it. Her eyes scanned the first few pages. I saw her lips part in disbelief. Then her hands started shaking. You've been spying on us? No. I've been protecting myself, and now you. She flipped another page. A text from my father that read. If he keeps poking around, we'll say he threatened you. A restraining order will make him back off. I saw her face change. From fear, to realization. To rage. She dropped the folder and sat down hard on the couch. He said it was love, she whispered. He said you didn't know how to love me. That you were too busy, too cold. Jenny, that was never love. That was ownership. Her eyes welled up. I thought I left a prison. I didn't know I stepped into another. I knelt in front of her. I'm not here to win you back. I'm not here for revenge anymore. I'm here to burn down the tower he built over all of us. She nodded, slowly. Then let's burn it together. And just like that, the game changed. I wasn't hunting alone anymore. And my father? He had no idea that the two people he betrayed most had just joined forces. But he'd find out soon. And when he did, he'd finally learn what it meant to be powerless. By the time Jenny and I left her place that night, we were no longer exes. We weren't lovers again. We weren't friends. We were co-conspirators, and that kind of bond, born from betrayal and fire, runs deeper than love sometimes. For the first time in weeks, I saw something new in her eyes. Not guilt. Not shame. Resolve. And that was dangerous, for the man who thought he owned her. We started simply. Jenny agreed to keep up the act. She still played house with my father. Still wore the same smile in public, the same soft voice in private. But now she was listening. Watching. Planting seeds. "You should get a new phone, baby," she told him sweetly one evening. "The old one keeps lagging." She swapped it for one Nate helped me prep, a perfect clone rigged with spyware. Location tracking, call forwarding, microphone access. We could listen to him in real time, even when the phone was in his pocket. And listen we did. The first night, he muttered while brushing his teeth about calling the custody guy in town. I made note of the name, Phil Torrance, a family attorney who owed my dad favors from their golf club days. The second night, he drunkenly called a buddy and bragged. "She's soft clay now, man. All I gotta do is keep her off balance. She'll sign anything I put in front of her." Jenny cried when she heard that one. "I thought he loved me," she said. "No," I told her, "he used you. And now we're going to use him." We didn't go to the police. Not yet. That would be too fast. Too clean. We needed the fall to be long, public, and humiliating. The kind of downfall you don't recover from. So I called in another favor, from my friend Ashley, who ran a nonprofit for emotionally abused women. She knew how to speak to people like Jenny. Knew how to help a victim reclaim their voice. But most importantly, she had friends in media. The kind who'd love a story like this. 2 weeks later, it began. Jenny accidentally left my father's texts open on her iPad when she met with a local reporter under the pretense of a women's support interview. No names were mentioned in the first article, just the story of a man using emotional manipulation and legal threats to trap his son's ex-wife. But those in town? They knew exactly who the article was about. The whispers started almost immediately. By the end of the week, the country club removed him from their board. "Until things are resolved," he told Jenny, "they'll regret that." She told me, "He's starting to slip. Drinking more. Less careful." Perfect. Then we dropped the next domino. Ashley arranged for Jenny to speak, publicly, at a small panel on psychological abuse. She wasn't supposed to name him. That was the deal. But right before the mic was passed to her, I whispered. "Say it." "Say what?" "His name. All of it." She looked at me, wide-eyed. "I'm scared," she said. "I'll be right here. And once you say it, you're free." So she did. She stood in front of 50 people, including cameras, and said, "His name is Richard Dunley. He is my ex-husband's father. He took advantage of me at my most vulnerable moment. And then tried to separate me from my children." You could have heard a pin drop. The moderator's face went pale. Ashley just nodded proudly. That night, it made local news. 2 days later, it was on social media. And by the end of the week, my father's world began to collapse. He called me. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "You think you're clever?" he spat. "No. Just patient. You teamed up with her? After what she did to you? You taught her everything she knows. I just taught her the rest. You're going to regret this, son." "No. You are." Click. He tried to go on the offensive after that. Filed a defamation suit against Jenny. Bad move. We had all his texts. All the recordings. The cloned phone data. A lawyer from Ashley's nonprofit took the case pro bono and countersued for psychological abuse and attempted parental alienation. Jenny gave a full deposition. So did I. My lawyer submitted my mother's letter as context. And then, as if fate wanted to throw in one final twist, my uncle called. "Heard about the lawsuits," he said. Wanted to tell you something before it comes out the wrong way. What? There was another woman. What do you mean, another? She wasn't just your mom's cousin. Or Jenny. There was someone else. A long time ago. Who? He hesitated. Then said, your kindergarten teacher. That night, I didn't sleep. Because I realized something. This wasn't just about what my father did. It was about how long he'd been doing it. How many women he'd broken. How many people he'd manipulated. And suddenly, my revenge didn't feel big enough anymore. It needed to be final. Permanent. Public. And just maybe, criminal. The days that followed Jenny's public revelation moved like a landslide, slow at first, then terrifyingly fast. The old man's face was still plastered on his company website, but clients began pulling out one by one. Local papers picked up the story and ran it under headlines like, respected local businessman accused of emotional abuse by son's ex-wife. Community leader tied to pattern of psychological control. I watched the online reaction grow in real time. Every like, every share, every disgusted comment chipped away at the image he'd spent a lifetime curating. Jenny and I didn't celebrate. We waited. Watched. Stayed focused. Because monsters like him don't collapse all at once. They fight. They lash out. And they always have one more secret. And that secret came knocking, literally, on the 8th morning since the article dropped. I was sipping bitter coffee, looking over the latest affidavit draft, when a small knock tapped against my front door. Not loud. Not urgent. Almost hesitant. I opened it to find a woman. Mid-40s. Nervous, thin. She looked like she hadn't slept in years. I'm sorry. I'm not sure you remember me. My name's Holly Travis. The name tickled something in my brain, like a splinter you can't quite grab. I was your babysitter, she said. I blinked. When you were 5. Back in Maple Hill. And then I remembered. Sort of. A shadowy outline of a sweet teenager who used to let me eat Pop-Tarts before bed. I've seen the stories about your dad, she said, voice tight. And I needed to come. I didn't know who else to talk to. I let her in. She didn't sit. She didn't ask for water. She just stood there in the middle of my living room, arms crossed like she was holding herself together. And then she said it. When I was 17, your dad, he locked the basement door behind me. My lungs stopped working. I was babysitting. You were upstairs, already asleep. I went down to do laundry, and he followed. Said the machine was broken, but I could help. He closed the door and turned the light off. She took a shaky breath. I managed to run. I got out before he could do anything. Told my parents. They didn't believe me. Said I was making it up. I just stared at her. Silent. Because deep down, I believed her. Every word. She continued. I've stayed quiet all these years. Built a life. But when I saw Jenny's name, and yours, I had to come forward. Because I think there were others. Maybe girls who didn't get out. That changed everything. This wasn't about cheating anymore. Or control. This was predation. Real. Lasting. Legal. I called Ashley. Told her what Holly had shared. She went cold on the line. We need more, she said. One account won't be enough for prosecution, not after 30 years. What if there's more? Then we need them. Yesterday. So I went hunting. Back through old yearbooks. Church directories. Chamber of Commerce newsletters. I tracked down names, dates, faces. Any woman who'd ever worked around him. Babysat. Waitressed at his golf club. Dated his colleagues. Some hadn't seen or heard of him in decades. Some still lived with scars. One woman, Paula, had gotten pregnant at 19 and lost the baby under stress. Wouldn't name the father. Saw a picture of my dad and went pale. Another said he used to corner her in the stockroom when she worked retail in high school. Called her sweetheart and asked if she was lonely. Suddenly, the man who broke up my marriage didn't seem so unique in his evil. He'd always been this way. Jenny had just been his latest victim. And I? His only true threat. That night, Jenny and I met in her car behind the grocery store, like something out of a noir film. I showed her the folder. The names. The transcripts. The possible leads. Her hands trembled. "Are we safe?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not yet." She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in weeks. Not fear. Conviction. "Then let's finish this." And just like that, it was no longer about revenge. It was a reckoning. And I had no idea just how deep the rabbit hole went. Because as we were talking, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think you're clever. You don't know what he's capable of." I stared at it. Then I showed Jenny. Her eyes widened. "That's not from him," she whispered. "That's from his lawyer. His fixer." I checked the number again. Then it hit me. Phil Torrance, the same lawyer who had once helped him write custody strategy. The man my dad once bragged about owning. Now he was warning me off. But it was too late for warnings. Too late for silence. I wasn't afraid anymore. The message from my father's fixer, Phil Torrance, didn't shake me. It clarified things. They were watching us. They knew we were close. And now they were trying to scare us off. But the mistake they made, the mistake he made, was thinking I still had anything left to lose. I didn't. Not after Jenny. Not after my mother. Not after realizing my entire childhood was built on the bones of silence and power. Jenny and I doubled down. Ashley connected us to an investigative journalist, national level. A woman named Blair who specialized in buried scandals, especially those involving powerful men and long-silenced victims. We gave her everything. The texts. The voice recordings. The names of the other women. The testimonies. Holly's story. My mother's letter. Blair didn't flinch. She just listened and took notes like a surgeon studying an infected organ before slicing it open. "This," she said finally, "is going to hurt him more than prison ever could." 2 weeks later, the article dropped. Front page of a Sunday investigative magazine. The man behind the mask, a father, a predator, a town's silent shame. Photos. Quotes. Audio transcripts. The whole narrative laid bare. It didn't take long. 3 women filed charges. Then 5. Then 7. The sheriff's office opened an official investigation. The attorney general made a statement about expanding it statewide. My father disappeared the next day. Vanished. Phone off. House abandoned. Car left in long-term parking at a regional airport. No note. No suitcase. No goodbye. They searched for a week. Found nothing. People speculated, fled to Canada, jumped in a lake, plastic surgery, suicide. But I knew better. He was too proud to run. Too strategic to die without controlling the story. And too arrogant to think anyone could touch him. Which is why I wasn't surprised when I came home one night and found him sitting in my garage. In the dark. Like a ghost from my childhood. "You made a mistake," he said calmly, watching me close the door behind me. I didn't answer. You think all those women cared about justice? About doing the right thing? He chuckled low, bitter. They wanted attention. Someone to blame. A piece of the story. And you gave it to them. You fed them the script. No, I said. You did. He stood slowly, like a man stretching in his own casket. You've ruined my life. You ruined ours first. He stepped forward, real close. You think you're the hero in this? You don't even know what your mother was really running from. I stiffened. What are you talking about? She wasn't scared of me, he said, voice dropping to a whisper. She was scared of you. I didn't move. She said there was something off about you. Always watching. Always listening. You'd stare at her like you were studying her. You were 7 and you told her, you smile wrong when Dad's home. She said you gave her nightmares. I stared into his eyes. She also said she wanted to run. He smiled. A slow, cruel thing. Maybe. But maybe it wasn't from me. I reached for my phone to call the police. He lunged. We struggled, brief, sharp, like two predators who'd finally recognized each other. I slammed his wrist into the garage wall, his hand flinching open. A small silver key hit the floor. What's that? I asked, panting. He didn't answer. But I recognized it. It was the same key my mother used to hide behind the spice rack in the old house. The basement key. The locked basement. I didn't sleep. I drove that night, 3 hours north, to the crumbling house where I'd grown up. It had been sold, resold, foreclosed, and was now a boarded-up ghost. I broke in through the back. Walked through dust and silence. Until I reached the basement. The key fit. I turned it. And walked into something colder than air. The room was empty, mostly. Just some old crates, tarps, a broken chair. But on one wall, scratched into the brick, was a name. Holly. And next to it, Emma. And Beth. Anne. Jenny. I stood in that room until sunrise, staring at the wall of names. He'd been marking them. Cataloging them like trophies. They were never just flings. Or lapses. Or accidents. They were his collection. That morning, I drove straight to the sheriff's department. I gave them the key. Told them about the basement. And said, if there's a God in heaven, you'll find something down there that puts him away forever. They did. DNA samples. A torn sweater matching a missing girl from 2002. Hair. Blood. One child's shoe. My father was no longer just a predator. He was a serial monster. And now he was hunted. They caught him in Kansas a week later, trying to buy a bus ticket under a fake name. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. Not even in court. He just stared at me from the defense table like a man trying to memorize the one person who finally destroyed him. They gave him 4 consecutive life sentences. He'll never see the outside world again. Jenny and I sat side by side at the hearing. Not as lovers. Not as friends. But as survivors. And when it was over, she asked me a question I didn't expect. Do you think, she said, this is the end? I looked at her. And I said, no. I think it's the beginning.